Atlantic Green. She's calling numbers 1-347-326-9626. Next, we are going to get on the phone our good friend Robin Schneider, and at the same time, we're going to be having Rebecca Hamilton Brown. Many may know Rebecca. I believe she's one of the courageous parents whose child is treating with cannabis and has shared her story in many different venues, and of course, it's a story of great interest to a lot of people. Welcome, Rebecca, and welcome, Robin.
Thank you.
Hi, Michael.
Both of you, I think, perfect. I'm sorry I didn't get you guys on earlier either. We were just rambling on with other guest, Chris. But the issue comes up, of course, in for patients across the country, in terms of the ability to ingest cannabis in ways other than either eating the plant directly or, smoking it or vaporizing it. First, Rebecca, tell us, what kind of impact this Carruthers opinion, as it stands right now, would have on how your child is using cannabis as medicine.
Oh, my God, it's devastating. For 18 months, my son has been treated with cannabis oil and has had great success. And then all of a sudden, the rug has been jerked out from under us. What are we supposed to do? We can medicate him and have the fear of the police coming to our door. It's very scary, and I'm not alone. There's so many parents coming out of the woodwork in Michigan after the CNN documentary that are desperate for treatment for their children. And these people are desperate. They're at the end of their medical rope, and this is their only opportunity for treatment for their children's conditions. Most of these kids have severe seizure disorders, and once you use 2 pharmaceuticals and failed them, your chances of a third one working are less than 1%. So this is a devastating blow to our community, for sure.
Well, it's interesting because I think, the impact of it in general, just beyond the concept of edibles, even though it's not really discussed, it gets into just the making of some of those things. Sometimes the more than 2.5 ounces of material needed to be used to create a monthly supply of, something so it can be regular, so it can be consistent.
Right.
And once you start using it, it's going to be there because this is the medicine you're going to use. And none of that is really recognized in the Act. Unfortunately, it all comes on the, Section 8 side. But that's the other side of this. It's not even like what you're possessing, to give to the patient. It's, how you get there as well from the caregiver side and what may be needed to produce that kind of specialized, ingestion method or, if not the quantity, just the, processing of it and, being subject to, extracting. So, it's, the state police has yet to give their legal update, right? We've been checking that regularly. That was something interesting. I actually was talking to a police officer in Warren today, someone in the Warren narcotics, and I asked him about that. What is your position on that? And his response was, well, the entire weight is what we would go by. So they're only allowed to have 2.5 ounces. They can only have 2.5 ounces of a brownie if it had any marijuana in it, which is a more workable, I don't think that is necessarily right, but considering where the opinion leaves off right now, I don't know, that probably doesn't help at all with the peace of mind, and obviously it needs to be addressed. But, Robin, that's where you come in. What is the story about happenings in Lansing? Are any of our friends in the legislature, if any exist, listening to what's happening here? Or did they hear Rebecca and what's happening?
Absolutely, they are. They absolutely are. And when I first began talking with Rebecca, and she, just expressed how concerned she was because she didn't feel that the parents had enough protections to continue treating their children. And I think many parents in the state are, not going to stop treating their children. And so we get in a situation where, they're just really uncomfortable with the situation. And parents who are going through, taking care of children who are sick. They don't need that, stress on them. So she, she expressed to me what kind of medications the kids used, what kind of extraction methods, and next thing I knew, I had parents emailing me from all over the state explaining what their child's condition is, what kind of treatment they're using or interested in using, what kind of method of extraction that they're using, and the results that they've had for their children. And what I found was very diverse. Different parents found that different kinds of solvents worked better for their children. And so after looking at it, we all kind of talked and agreed that no child should get left behind as we move forward with legislation, and that we need to work very hard to make sure that whatever form of medicine those children are currently using, they should have protection for that if that's what's working for them. Immediately started lobbying the legislature, explaining to them, what the issue was, and that we really needed more protections, not just for parents, but for cancer patients, people who use feeding tubes, things like that, and not to mention the fact that most doctors, really aren't comfortable with prescribing something that their patients only can smoke. A lot of doctors are writing recommendations and saying, I'm not giving you this to smoke. I want you to use an edible form or a topical oil, depending on their condition. So I've got to give all the credit in the world right now to Rebecca and her parent group, because they immediately didn't waste any time and started reaching out to their legislators. And what they did was, go in and spoke from their hearts. They really spoke from their hearts. And that's how you change the hearts and minds of the legislators, is by getting the actual patients or parents of patients to go in and share their patient testimonies. And what happened from there was we found legislators very eager to come up with a resolution. So right now we're working directly with Rep. Carlton's office, since he's been a fantastic champion on our issue. He's done a lot of great things to raise awareness about what our needs are. And so we went to his office right away and said, how quickly can we get this done? And, that's in the works, and, we're hoping to have something introduced fairly soon.
First of all, it's fantastic to hear that there's a community that can become organized quickly and at least, be responsive to the legislature, and there's, at least some people that are willing to listen. It reminds me of, Carlton always tells a story. He's a good storyteller when he gets up and speaks in front of groups, and he tells a story of how, in 1920, whatever, the first chiropractor, and he, of course, the chiropractor, adjusted someone's back, and the next day they were arrested for, practicing medicine without a license, and their house was forfeited, and that's kind of where we are with medical marijuana. And I like that, hopefully we can move forward, because it's taken a long time for, chiropractors or whatever, but he's sympathetic to that cause.
Yeah.
And the other
Rebecca,
thing
would you explain? Oh, go ahead.
No, please, go ahead. Ask Rebecca.
Rebecca, I just want Rebecca to explain something to everybody. I would like you to touch on the medication resistance and the whole plant philosophy that your parent group has, because I just think it's so great.
Sure. Well, most of our children have failed numerous medications, diets, you name it, we've done it, and that's the bulk of our group. And so, like I said, once you've failed 2 anti-epileptics, the chances of the third one working are less than 1%. So these people are, looking for an alternative that will help their children. And these are children that are at risk of dying every day. We've lost 6 kids since April, and that puts a tremendous stress on the family. Now, some people have said, well, your kids want high CBD meds. Why don't you get something that's on the market that's just the CBD product? Well, what they aren't understanding is that, 1, it's extremely expensive, but 2, those only contain CBD derived from industrial hemp. They don't contain all the other cannabinoids, terpenes, and all the other little components that make the whole puzzle and work in an entourage effect to help our kids. I mean, we have, in fact, one little boy who's having 200 seizures an hour who is now 11 months seizure-free. This is our Lorenzo's oil. This is an oil that can save our kids' lives. I mean, these parents are just average people that are rising up and contacting their legislatures because this is for our kids' lives. Our kids, are at risk every single day. And so this isn't something that we take lightly, and that's why people have mobilized, because they're desperate and they're willing to step up and say, we need this and we need it now.
There is a certain...
I have to say I was amazed as I was getting the data in from the parents who were sending us data for the drafting process of the bill. We're talking school counselors who have kids with seizure disorders. We're talking, just very, very reputable people who were at their wits' ends. Yeah.
I'm interested to know, Rebecca, about within the community of people that you're interacting with parents who obviously all are feel some kind of risk involved. I'm sure all of them didn't. I'm sure all of them were not immediately aware of how to grow marijuana, right? I mean, for those that don't know,
right.
The other challenges of the stress of being a parent of a sick child, for starters, and going through everything that you're describing and having failures, and then going out and trying to find a cannabis ingestion method that's going to work in an area that's very, not a lot of immediate information and a lot of trial and error. The parent or legal guardian, by law, is and must be the caregiver, putting a lot of responsibility on that individual and raising some other questions about availability of, in need and how long it takes to get started and how do you do that and how does one learn, and shouldn't somebody be looking over your shoulder, advising you in some way before you cut a plant and make it into a medicine to give to your child? I mean, there's a lot of unworkable things within the law that are directly related to the challenges that you're speaking of. I'm curious, and just of those that are within the community, how many of their pediatricians or, what would be the family doctor of the children, were the recommending physicians, or if not, the one that signed the, one of the two required signatures, now, or how many of them are, approving of it as a medical use? I'm talking, in terms of the traditional medical places.
Right. There's probably two of us. Our neurologist and our pediatrician signed, and I think maybe one other patient. Doctors are very hesitant to sign, especially for a pediatric patient. But luckily, we do have a network of doctors that we can rely on. And it's not something that parents go into lightly. And I've been working really hard with the parents in Michigan to develop a network of people that we can go to for guidance or support. And, we're a community, and we help each other, and we look out for each other, and we work together. Like I said, my group is 1,600 parents right now, and we are all over the world. It's not just in Michigan. There's a huge green rush to Colorado. Parents are desperate. They'll do anything to help their kids. I mean, for your listeners that are parents, think about it. What would you do if your kid was seizing every day and there wasn't any medicine that would work? What would you do?
There are some things that are so innately, to our human spirit, and one of them I think everyone understands is as kids, it's what you'll do to protect your child or what you'll do for your kid. I mean, there's to no end.
Right.
And the risk, it doesn't matter. And you'll die, you'll stand in front of a truck for I get, it's terrible, but the risks involved with that and having to parent, in those circumstances, it requires a lot of courage and a lot of, energy and a lot of, good spirits and, remaining, there's a lot of challenges there, and people, you should not have the additional stresses. So I'm curious, what was your personal experience with meeting with some of these? I mean, I would imagine they're going to be receptive, but do you sense that they're being genuine about this? Do you think that they're really recognizing it as a medicine? And I'm speaking of in your interactions with some of the legislatures that you may have spoke of regarding
I think, what, I talked to Robin about this. Our talking points are our stories. Our stories are compelling. I mean, I go in there and just talk about what my son has gone through, how he's suffered, how this isn't a drug issue, it's a compassion issue. Why should my son suffer when this medicine is available? And you know what? I've been received with one lady broke down and cried. I mean, I'm just telling the truth. This is where we're coming from. This is our story. This is our lives. Walk a mile in my shoes. And you know what? I haven't had, in all the people I've talked to, not just legislators, but in the last year and a half, I have not had one person tell me that I was making a mistake. Because my son, he's at risk of dying every single day. I wake up every day and think, thank God he made it another night, because I could wake up and he could very easily have had a seizure in his sleep. So you know what? When those people hear that story and they think about when their kids were little or their grandkids or whatever, you know what? They can relate on that level. Like you said, it's an innate, instinctual level. You want to take care of your child, and that's all of us. You know what our parents want to do. We just want to take care of our babies. We don't want to get them high. I mean, we're not talking about that. We're talking about making them better.
It is something that you know, you don't even. It's simple as that. I mean, it's a very, and you know, I'm just. It seems like it would be, you know, the most, you know, a way in which you're going to really shift someone's mind. You know, I don't know what the starting point was of anyone that would hear that story, you know, where they're going to move from. But, you know, your talking points is your reality, which is, you know, evidence of its medical value, and any naysayer, you know, would have nothing to say. You know, I mean, there's no response to that. So I'm just,
right.
I mean, it's obviously very compelling.
The proof is in the pudding. The proof is in the pudding. My son's doing great. And, you know, the bulk of the kids are doing great. Most of them have had a minimum of a 50% reduction in seizures. In fact, we have Orrin Davinsky, one of the top pediatric neurologists in the country at NYU, starting to do a study with Dravet and LGS kids. It's a seizure disorder like my son has. He's starting a CBD study with these kids very soon. I mean,
Great.
We've gotten the ear of some very important people in the medical community, in the political community. We are spreading the word. The pediatric community is rising up, and we are spreading the word. And that the CNN documentary, when people were able to see that little girl's seizure and how her life has been changed, that started the conversation in the way that it's never been started before, I believe. You know, people are seeing that we're not getting our kids high. This is about medicine. And that's the way we treat it. We think of it as medicine.
I wanted to ask you something about there's a philosophy that goes into much of this from a parent's perspective. And there's a number of really interesting things related to the parent caregiver and how that process is supposed to work with children, which I think also I've used in the past to argue like about things about dosing for adults, but the amount of frequency of use and dosing is for children. The only place that it's specified in the law, the Michigan Medical Marijuana Act, is for children. It says that the parent or legal guardian caregiver shall determine frequency of use, dosing, as opposed to the physician, right? And of course, you know, how would, you know, you have as good of a chance at figuring it out as a doctor, probably better than a doctor, because they're not looking and you know, experiencing. But there is a specific philosophy that seems that I've heard and is the main methodology of going about this, which is not high THC level plants, but more CBD. And there has been some strains, and there's some caregivers who've shared their genetics and are growing plants that have very high CBDs, which are a completely different effect on, you know, different conditions, but specifically on seizures and with children, because it doesn't have the psychoactive effects.
Right. We use the bulk of the parents use non-psychoactive high CBD meds. You know, my caregiver has a 20-to-1. That's, you know, we use a 20-to-1. There is some 15-to-1. So we're not giving our kids a bunch of THC. We're giving them high CBD meds.
Explain the 20 and 15-to-1. Some of our listeners may not be aware of what that ratio is.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's CBD to THC ratio. So for every 1 milligram of THC, there's 20 milligrams of CBD.
Great, thank you.
Uh-huh.
That's
and we have
not
everything,
very...
and we have everything lab tested. I mean, we're not, like I said, these parents are treating this as medicine, so we have it lab tested. We understand dosing. The original 6 in the group, we had to hack it all out step by step and learn along the way. But now we have kind of a set guideline for parents. Every child is different, every condition is different, but typically a child would start at 1 milligram of cannabis oil per pound. So if a child was 100 pounds, it would be, obviously 100 milligrams, and then you'd build up from there.
Interesting. And of the children that you are speaking of that, were jumping on board, is there a commonality of the conditions by which they've been certified? I mean, or is it just that they were?
Yeah. No, like 90% of our kids have severe seizure disorders. We have a couple with, we have a boy with autoimmune disease. We have other kids with like chromosome issues, but the bulk are seizure kids.
And of the people that are involved, who are you're finding just like 100% change in their overall well-being and
yes, definitely. I mean, not all the kids are seizure-free, but you have to understand a 50% reduction is huge. Most kids have better than that. I know before my son started, he was seizing several times a day, and now he has maybe 1 to 2 seizures a month. That to me is huge. But it's not just that. It's not just taking away the seizures. It's sleeping better. It's overall just demeanor and attitude and feeling good, eating better, just everything. It's not just one piece of the puzzle. It's the whole thing. It changes everything. And you think about it, when a kid is seizing all day, how do they feel? They don't feel good. But when the seizures are gone, they can live, they can play, they feel good. It changes everything. It changes the whole family. It doesn't just change the child. Because you know what? When you're living from seizure to seizure, you have no life.
That's right. Nobody does, right? Whoever's in the family is kind of on call at all times. It's and
it's like living with a ticking time bomb.
Right.
It really is. You're tiptoeing around it, but you know it's going to go off.
There was a Dr. Bierman from California who was on, and we've also had Lester Grimspoon, another one of the pioneers in medical cannabis. His son, of course, passed away from a condition, but during like chemotherapy, we spoke of some of the. But anyways, I mention all that because he, of course, was a proponent and had used the word of the entourage effect of the smoking of cannabis, which is as an explanation for why some of the synthetic marinols and whatnot don't work, because there isn't the all-out entourage effect. But the David Bierman spoke of this concept of cannabinoid deficiencies, as like a medical condition, a syndrome of some kind. And, I always, was fascinated by that in terms of like, there's people that, and I know we're talking about serious seizures, but there's a chemical makeup of some kind in there that is setting that off. And you're describing a treatment with a medicine that is made of molecules that the brain and other parts of the body have receptors specifically for. And it's to me it always made sense that some people, on whatever levels and layers of this, on a psychological level for some and other types of medical overall, that there's a balance there that I think people benefit medically. I'm talking about not, of course, at the level of severity and which you're talking about the seizures and whatnot, but in a way it is, because there's obviously a chemical change, right? There's something happening within that brain and bloodstream that is affecting it positively, and it's it just lends
It was endocannabinoid deficiency syndrome, when the body doesn't manufacture enough cannabinoids. And I think that could affect numerous different conditions.
Is that a thing that's talked about, in terms of, but they're not even there yet. They have no there's no answers to
not
some of these.
widely acknowledged.
Well, in my group, we talk about all kinds of things. We have a few doctors, and, we talk about, parents don't want to just blindly follow. They want to understand. So, we look for research. We look for articles. We look for experts. We're on it for sure. I mean, when it comes to your kid, you want to know what's going on and why. And so, parents are definitely involved in that part. This isn't
helping
something
each other find doctors too.
Yes, that's
helping the parents find doctors.
Rebecca, I'm curious: are there many physicians that are willing to, are they plentiful that are willing to give answers on these topics, or do you feel that area is still not plentiful with information?
Not plentiful. Not plentiful, but you know what? We're working on it. We, my neurologist, for instance, is going to a seminar on the endocannabinoid system. I mean, he wants to learn, and I think that when more information becomes available and these doctors are seeing it, they are curious. They don't think necessarily in terms of this sort of thing. They're, more they want to see the studies, but there are doctors that are open, and, we're just working hard to get more and more, and we just encourage parents to keep talking to your doctor. It's our job to educate our doctors and get them on board, and you know what? You'd be surprised that a lot of doctors have responded in a way that they'd like to know more information. They are curious, and especially, when they see kids doing well. I mean, like I said, again, the proof is in the pudding. When you've given these kids pill after pill after pill after pill and it's not worked, but then you try something different and it's working, that's pretty encouraging. And, for a lot of these parents, they are so desperate for just any little nugget of hope. Everybody needs that little piece of hope to go on, and this gives them that. It might not be a perfect therapy for their child, but any little scrap of hope gets them through another day.
A lot of times when we have a guest on, they're talking about a topic and they'll say something like you just did. I'll then say something. I'll try to say the same kind of thing or enhance the discussion. I can't say anything on top of you because you were speaking such powerful meanings.
Can you believe? And that this is exactly what we need. Our people like Rebecca, who speak from their heart, like I said, to the legislature, because it really opens their eyes and quickly. And I'm just thrilled to be able to, help her navigate through the legislature. It's been a wonderful experience working with her.
Well, thank you, Robin. It's been wonderful working with you, too, for sure.
All right, Robin, I can't let you go without asking you what the bill is going to look like, if at all, if you can share.
Which one?
Well, just anything dealing with the medibles, in terms of what the legislative response.
What we did, we just, we gave our recommendations to Rep. Calton's office, so we're just waiting to see what they come up with at this point.
I see. Do you think it would be something relative to this category of persons that we're speaking of, which would be the parent caregivers and their children, minors?
I think our goal is to make sure that every listed form of medication that came through on our data is covered and protected, because we want to make sure they're all legally safe.
Right. Well, there's so much. I mean, that opinion is so devastating. And I know it's not part of it, but in declaring what is usable and unusable, it took a category of things that people would do in the normal, workable way that they could be a caregiver, and made much of it arguably, arrestable. And much of the discussion of this Carruthers opinion has been on the front end of the patient or the caregiver with the brownie, and all the bad reasoning that says that that's an arrestable possession, is all illegal or all arrestable. But of course makes no sense in terms of what's really workable on the other side also, because the person that may be making those things is going to end up with material that we would all describe as being unusable, in the sense that it's cannabinoid materials have been taken out and you've left of some plant-like material, and if you're possessing that, that's that marijuana that you're not allowed to have. Also, it is just bad on both sides. And it I don't know. I mean, even though I just there's the Donald Taskin study.
We certainly want to make sure that everybody has protections for the manufacturing of the product, as well as the possession, transfer, transport, administration, all of it, and especially manufacturing. I mean, that's a big one, and it absolutely, I feel, needs to be addressed by the legislature, as well as weight. How are we going to count the weight of these things, and whether that's going to be a percentage or that's something we've got to work out the details, but it all has to be covered. And so I've been grateful to, Chris Lindsay, who you had on the show earlier, who's given us a ton of information on what's happened in other states to help us move forward. But, I just think it's wonderful that you're appealing the case, Michael, but I think that we need to set something more solid in the act and actually amend the act to fix this.
Well, if things go like they did in Montana, what Chris was saying is that the Supreme Court will punt, as they say, and say it's really not their job and have it be a legislative. Maybe so. I mean, we've had, as he described the progression of their Supreme Court, ours has been, pretty solid considering, not as great as it should have been. But
really tried to interpret it as a people's initiative according to the ballot language.
Yeah, which is heavy on, a right to a jury trial.
And medical use.
Well, there's nothing wrong with a two-pronged approach.
No, I know that, but what I guess I was going to say is, what do you foresee as a workable? I guess if the act is going to be amended, then it doesn't matter anymore. You know what I mean? Because then you can say, well, we're going to create a new category, or there's going to be something else that's going to be this, and what may have been excluded according to this Carruthers, however that finishes out, we're just going to make it so that we are legislating the protections from arrest for possessing these things and the people that are growing and making them. But, so then it's really not a fair question. But do you, like the current law is, because we can't measure the quantities of THC, we can detect its presence, but not the quantities. It's therefore illegal. There's none of it that you can have unless it's, from the plant or whatever. But the question becomes, under the current law, do you see, can you come up with a workable existing way that would be satisfactory both to the law enforcement community so that they, they gotta respect some kind of patient rights, but, and also something that.
Absolutely. As far as weight, you mean?
Yeah, under the current existing under Section 4, that's what I mean. Okay.
Well, I think, labeling is certainly something we should look into. I know Iron Labs has said, they're able to quantify the amount of the weight inside of the, if it's a food product. So obviously looking at all of those things, but we're a big fan of labeling and, how much product actually, how much marijuana as defined in the Public Health Code actually went into that brownie.
Is that, well, first of all, you said a number of different things. First, I agree with you 100% that when the Carruthers opinion says the unmeasurable, highly potent, none of that's true. They can't, it is measurable. They have the equipment to do it.
Completely.
They just don't have a protocol in place to do it. Furthermore, it is measurable because
the person... They need to use Iron Labs instead of the police laboratory next time.
Right. or even the caregiver that made it or the patient that made it. They know how much it's there, right? That's what...
self-reporting. That's self-reporting.
But
they talked about that in Carruthers, too.
That's on the far, far other end of it.
It should be a part of 4D. I think self-reporting is in order because of 4D and the presumption of medical use.
Well, there you go. Which is the most unspoken about part of the Act. We were talking about that earlier. There's never presumed, you know what I mean? Like Section 4 is seemingly has got this extra weight to it. Right now. Yeah, and unless there's some proof of, all right, listen, we're off topic here, but the labeling, I like that, but I would think a lot of people that are considering medical cannabis would be more inclined to try to say this often if they we're acquiring it in a way that they're used to buying other goods and services where there's an actual breakdown of material. But are you suggesting, Robin, that in addition to the levels of THC, you would give some kind of indication of from how much usable material it came from? Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely, yeah.
Oh.
But also, I mean, we looked at different states. Some states measure the weight of the marijuana as a more of like a percentage of how much THC is in the product, and then a potency type thing, but that requires, testing as well. So, we found,
other states can test potency, Robin?
The state of Washington. Yes, the state of Washington does. Yeah, and in fact, they have a really interesting thing happening out there where they're trying to set standards for testing, working as a group. But they basically, with their medibles, there's a potency limit rather than a weight limit.
Mm-hmm.
Is what I'm saying.
Right.
Well, Chad brought up a point of it that it could somehow. I mean, if you're putting it into the equation, it came from this amount of material, and then you're saying that it would be a certain percentage of that material into the product, but that's going to vary based on potency. It's just going to be that's going to be the problem,
But you can certainly limit it, no matter the potency of the starting material.
But okay, so labeling. You're going with labeling and Iron Labs, Robin, if I understand the answer. And the survey set. Just kidding. All right. Listen, we have to get our good friend Steve Green on if he's still holding on. I know
but there is a fundraiser coming up, Robin, isn't there, with NPRA?
Please.
There is. There absolutely is. That's Saturday, September 14th. That's just over, not this weekend, but next, at 6 p.m. at the Ann Arbor Arts Center. It's a fundraiser to support the National Patients' Rights Association lobby effort in Lansing. And if you want to RSVP, the phone number is 855-444-NPRA.
Excellent. Robin, thank you so much for all you're doing and all your hard work in Lansing.
Thank you.
Thank
you.
And Rebecca.
Thank you, Rebecca.
Rebecca,
Fantastic, Rebecca.
I want to say this. Hold on. Rebecca, thank you very much for coming on and being so open and courageous. You are what I call a force, and I really enjoyed talking to you, and I hope to talk to you again. And you really are a important voice that needs to be heard for the real, true medical value that this plant can have for so many people. And it's good to hear it articulated with such strength. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Anytime. Thanks. Bye-bye.
All right. Good night. And Steve, we're coming back with Steve Green.